The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Jesus said to his disciples, "There will be signs in the sun, the moon, and the stars, and on earth nations will be in dismay, perplexed by the roaring of the sea and the waves. People will die of fright in anticipation of what is coming upon the world, for the powers of the heavens will be shaken. And then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. But when these signs begin to happen, stand erect and raise your heads, because your redemption is at hand. Beware that your hearts do not become drowsy from carousing and drunkenness and the anxieties of daily life, and that day catch you by surprise like a trap. For that day will assault everyone who lives on the face of the earth. Be vigilant at all times, and pray that you have the strength to escape the tribulations that are imminent and to stand before the Son of Man." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
I don't know, with the exhortation, Jesus' exhortation to be vigilant, to not be caught off guard. I mean, I have to confess before we begin that I'm kind of caught off guard by the fact that we're in Advent. You know, it's seems to have come up on us rather quickly, or at least on me. And have I been caught somewhat unprepared? I mean, I have to say yes, but I have the better part of the day, I think, to figure some things out. So we'll be doing some of that together, of course, because, you know, as you know, the preacher, his first audience is himself. So if all of this seems a little Father Daniel centric, then you know, we've got that going for us. It's a great little gospel passage. It's you know, it's we hear a lot of end of worlds language. You know, it's apocalyptic, right? It's Jesus telling of what is to come, and what is to come is the toppling of the regime that opposed him. So Jesus, when he's talking about, you know, this end of world scenario, the signs in the sun, the moon, the stars, on earth nations will be in dismay, perplexed by the roaring of the sea and the wave. It's richly symbolic, pictorial language to give some sense of the end of the world, but it's limited to, in scope, at least I would say, the literal meaning of the text is limited to the regime, the kingdom, the forces, the powers that opposed Jesus, and they're being toppled. The kingdom of God is inaugurated and will be victorious, ultimately. It's been inaugurated in Jesus' death, and it is now implemented by the power of his Spirit in the people who trust and follow him. Right? So the kingdom of God inaugurated on the cross is being implemented in anticipation of and as a real participation in the coming kingdom of God. Jesus coming in power and glory, as it were. So we have this passage. It's okay. We use this. We know that this prophecy came to fulfillment. We know, and this is sign. It was sign for Jesus' followers that Jesus was enthroned at the right hand of God, and that nothing, no force, no power, no kingdom would steamroll God's plan, would steamroll the kingdom that Jesus inaugurated by his death, or that God inaugurated by Jesus' death and resurrection. Okay, so we've got that part down, but we pull it up today in order to get us into a certain kind of reflection and meditation that is associated with Advent, and especially this first part of Advent. So the last week and change of Advent is given over to an immediate preparation for Jesus' birth. His birth in Bethlehem, right? God's being born as a man, as a baby. Yeah, that's the immediate preparation that comes at the end of the season. So we celebrate Christmas. Well, I forget these things. Like you guys all know what Christmas is. Okay, fair enough. We prepare for Jesus' birth. But this first half of the Advent season is given over to reflection, meditation on, praying with the reality of Jesus' second coming. So that's why we have this passage in front of us. It's so we can think of Jesus' second coming. And I'd like to kind of weave it in a little bit with what I just said. Yeah, like there's all kinds of like end of world language here. And we know that although like the present or the old creation, what St. Paul will call the present sinful age, although it rumbles on, it will come to an end. Like what I'm saying is that the forces that have corrupted man and all of creation will be ultimately laid waste. They're being dealt with here and now because we're living under the rule of God as his chosen people. We're living under the rule of God. We're submitting ourselves to God's rule. We're living totally for God and his purposes here and now. But we know that the forces of sin and death are still active. Jesus has already declared that first and powerful victory over the forces of sin and death, the forces that corrupt creation and corrupt our hearts. But we're awaiting the full realization of that. But we await it as we participate in it. So we live out from under the corrupting forces. At least we try to. Right? We try to live out from under the corrupting forces and live totally for God and his purposes. This passage is used to say, although we live by, say, our cooperation with God here and now, and we submit ourselves freely to him here and now, the choice of submitting to him and the rule of God when Jesus returns doesn't exist. Because everything at that time, all human hearts, all of creation will submit to the rule of God. No opposition at that point will stand. Now, as I say that, I think I'm offering like a first reflection on where we are and what we need out of this Advent season. Because if I say to you, look, when Jesus returns, following him or living under his rule is compulsory. You don't have a choice. And if your kind of first reaction to that is, I don't know, I kind of like having the choice, then we have to grow. Right? Because we're giving ourselves now freely and eagerly to the rule of God. We're giving ourselves over to Jesus freely. But we realize like the struggle that's involved in that, the fact that we fall short and we fail. And we don't want to fall short and fail. We want to do it totally, fully. And when Jesus returns, the fullness will come. Like on a personal level, it's like we might have said yes. We say yes to God in our baptism. And if you personally didn't say yes to God in your baptism, someone stood in your place to say yes for you. And then our whole life then, from our baptism until now, has been a growing into that yes to God and to service of him. So we're growing into that as we go. And that yes, my yes to God, comes to perfection with the return of Jesus. But that means, what does it mean? It means that I want to live as close to that today as possible. I don't think that well, I'm going to say yes to him in the end, so I'm just going to say no to him all the way to begin with, it doesn't work like that. Right? Saying yes increases our capacity to say yes to God. And if that's the way it's going to be, and I say the way it's going to be, there's no kind of reluctance or hesitation or resistance to the way it's going to be, because the way of God is perfect. It's the joy of our hearts, right? We'll have the fruit of the Spirit to the full: love, joy, peace, patience, and the rest. We'll have it to the full, and that's what we want. And we anticipate that now by trusting and following Jesus. We anticipate that now by celebrating the Eucharist, by offering God thanks, and making of our whole heart and life a thank offering, in the thank offering, the Eucharist of Jesus. Okay, so I don't know. We've got all this going on. It's kind of hazy. I'm okay with it being hazy up here. The incense is particularly potent today. That's the frankincense and myrrh mix we've got going. It's a perfect Advent blend. And not to make a commercial for, they have my business. That's enough for them, I think. But I'm okay. I'm okay with hazy, but I don't want drowsy. And this is the point, right? Jesus is telling us to be vigilant at all times. And it's actually a really interesting construct he's used here to say, beware that your hearts do not become drowsy. And I would say drowsy gray, bland, blah, whatever, sluggish. Okay. Beware that your hearts do not become drowsy from carousing and drunkenness and the anxieties of daily life. You see, I think we'd expect that. We'd expect the first one, right? We'd expect that. Okay, don't become drowsy from carousing and drunkenness. Okay, those kind of illicit pleasures and the rest. We know we got to root them out. We know that they can't be there. We know that they're not going to last in the end. These kind of self-indulgent ways. We know that, and we know that our hearts can become drowsy that way. Right? It kind of it dulls the things that dull our senses, or have us target something other than God and praise of Him and service of Him, and pouring ourselves out recklessly in His service. Right? We know that all these things can dull us, and not just this stuff, not just things that we consume, right? But I should say not just things that we eat and drink, but also things that we consume, with our eyes. Right? Whatever it is. How many? I don't want to get into the business of cell phones, but you get the idea. We can become drowsy that way. But he also says the anxieties of daily life. We're just because the world presses in on us, right? Because we have real legitimate concerns about things like health, about things like providing for our families, about things like, I don't know, whatever it is, right? Legitimate concerns. But these things can become encroaching anxieties, such that they become our chief or our only focus. And we lose sense of the fact that we are made to live for God and His purposes. Every day, every moment of every day, at all times, in every way, we're supposed to live for God. He's summoned us to that task. We're supposed to glorify God in everything we do. And yet the anxieties of life push in on us, right? They hem us in. They make us drowsy. They have us fail to grasp the opportunities that are presented to us to participate in the work of implementation of the kingdom of God. Okay? Fine. Enough theory. Let me get to it. We're in Advent, right? We're in Advent. We're wearing purple. We got the purple candles, right? So this is a sign of royalty. This is Jesus' kingship. So our whole Advent exercise has to be about submitting to Christ the King. And if you don't believe me, then look at the words that you sing in every Advent hymn. It's all about kingship. So we want to live in light of the newborn King. We want to surrender our hearts and our lives to him. He's the King. We're not. We'll follow his lead. Okay, so this one. What does he want to accomplish in this time for us? And how does he want it to happen? Well, this is also, right, the purple is a sign of penitence, right? It's a sign of penance. It's a penitential season. And in the penitential seasons, we commit ourselves to the disciplines of prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. I could say, like, it's just what we do. Of course, Jesus says it in the Gospels. So it is kind of like just what we do because we follow Jesus. So there's that. But we say, like, these are not like 3 random practices that we plucked from thin air in order to keep you guys occupied during penitential seasons. That's not the point. The point is that in anticipation of the rule of God, we have to live into it now. And we live into it by growing in our yes to God. We live into it by our growth in love, our growth in charity, our growth in reckless self-gift, our growth in generous outpouring of self, right? We're growing into that life, the life of the world to come, by prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. Prayer, growing in love of God. Fasting, growing in love of self. And almsgiving, growing in love of neighbor. Okay, so now, I could say, look, this whole season then is about our growth in love. We have to grow in love. And I could say, okay, look, guys, tell me, we'll nod in acclamation. Are we going to grow in love this season? I say, yeah. I'm going to grow in love. Yeah, okay. No, but look, we know that the spirit is willing and the flesh is weak, which means that in this situation, we have to commit ourselves to particular practices. We have to commit ourselves to these particular disciplines in real ways. So what are you doing in the realm of prayer this Advent season? This is where I say, like, I still have the bread in the oven there, right? It's still baking for me. Because I'm not exactly sure. But it's Sunday, so we're excused from penance anyway. So I'm not eager to implement that, but I'm going to have to wake up tomorrow and do something. So what am I doing in the realm of prayer? What am I doing in the realm of fasting? What am I doing in the realm of almsgiving? And let me say, we don't have to get so two-dimensional, right? I mean, prayer is like, it's not just longer time in prayer. For most of us, it probably is a longer time in prayer. But it also prayer has to be a place of devotion. There's all risk, and we want to grow in devotion. Do we love God with our whole heart? We put in some time, but do we love God with our whole heart? So we got a lot of growth there. So and we can pick up some practice, right? You want to pray a rosary, you want to pray a decade of the rosary, you want to pray the Divine Mercy Chaplet, you want to pick up some novena, you want whatever it may be. There are any number of things. You want to make sure the first thing on your lips in the morning is praise of God? Fine. Commit to something. Commit to something. You want to go to Mass during a week, once a week during Advent? It's like 3 or 4 weeks, guys. It's not a lot. So, it's a short one. It's a short one. But make it count in that sense, right? Prayer, fasting. What are you going to fast from? It's good to fast from things like that we eat. But how about things like the phone? How about things that waste your time? Right? I don't have an extra 10 minutes to pray. Do you not? Do you not? Show me your phone after Mass. I'll find the 10 minutes for you. Do you know? Like, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out together, right? No, with fasting, right? I mean, we have to deny ourselves. We have to create space. So our lives are just flooded with nonsense. So we have to fast. Got to fast from something. Almsgiving, right? Yes, we have to give. We have to give financially. But we also have to become more generous towards the people around us. And how do we do that? We do that in a number of ways. And and if you don't know, you don't have to know, can I say? You don't have to know what your Advent should be. Can I say why? Because Jesus knows. Jesus knows what your Advent should be. And Jesus knows what the practical things are that you should take on. Jesus knows. So all you're responsible for is asking him and listening. And then, of course, seeing it through, right? That's because the seeing it through part is pretty tough. But that's it. Ask him. And I tell you what, if he comes back with something really big, that's probably not him talking. That's you, right? Like if he says you got to fast for this next week, you're not going to eat for like 3.5 weeks now, that's not him. That's not him. That's you. Right? Because all these things can become a point of pride. It's little things, my friends. It's little things. It's little things done so as to grow in love, in anticipation of not only Christ's return, his second coming, when all will be love and all that isn't love will have to be dealt with, but also in anticipation of his birth in Bethlehem, that we can adore him, that we can love God with our whole heart, mind, soul, and strength. And we will show that love by loving our neighbor as ourselves.